Hey there, I'm James. Welcome to Game Stories, where we write games that tell stories. And in this episode, we are taking a look at Lasers and Feelings by John Harper. It's a one-page role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game. We're just going to walk through the rules and learn how to play it. Like in the last video, because it's such a short game, you could easily read through it and learn to play yourself. Well, there's actually quite a lot going on in this design, just like in the last one. So it's kind of worth looking it over together, teasing out some examples of how you might do some of the things that it's talking about. So let's take a look. Okay, so here's Lasers and Feelings. It's a nice looking PDF with a fancy spaceship design down here. And the way that the page is laid out here, on this side you've kind of got what the player characters do, and on this side you've got rules for the GM or the game master. So the division of narrative responsibility here is that there's going to be a game master or GM who controls the world and everything in it, and there will be players who control their characters and all of their decisions. Okay? The results of those decisions will be decided by rolling the dice. So the resolution mechanism here is a random one. Okay. To get started, you should definitely read all of the text on here, because every little piece is some sort of important piece of how this game is to be played. There's a lot crammed into the space. It says, you are the crew of the interstellar scout ship Raptor. Your mission is to explore uncharted regions of space, deal with aliens both friendly and deadly, and defend the consortium worlds against space dangers. So basically like Star Trek kind of a theme. Captain Darcy has been overcome by the strange psychic entity known as something else, leaving you to fend for yourselves while he recovers in a medical pod. So the setup is we're kind of Star Trek-y ship going out to discover worlds and defend our group of planets. Our captain has been taken over by something else. Something's wrong with his brain. It's connected to something else now. Which is a good setup, because if there were a captain, then presumably one player would play that captain and would be telling everybody else what to do. But in a role-playing game, you don't really want that. You want everyone to kind of be deciding what they do. So the captain's out of the picture, and we, the players, have to kind of negotiate and collaborate to figure out what we're going to do together as this crew. First thing we'll do is to create characters, and there's a little character creation system here. There's 4 numbered things, but there's actually 5 decisions that you have to make to create your character. The first one is, or is there 6? No, I think it's 5. The first one is to choose a style for your character, and it gives you a list of styles. Then you choose a role for your character, and it gives you a list of those. Then it asks you to pick a number, and we'll talk about that and what that does in a minute. And then you get a name. Give yourself a cool space name like Sparks McGee or something, it says. It also talks here about your gear, but it's not a choice you have to make. It's just something you need to remember, that you have stuff that you can use to help you. And then the last thing you have to do, there should really be a blue number 5 right here next to player goal. You have to choose a goal for your character, something that they're going to try to do that's going to motivate them during the course of this game. All of these choices are meant to help you feel like you're a character in the world of this premise, right? So let's say that we're gonna try to create a character that's like Spock on Star Trek. We like that. We like that guy. He's sort of cold and logical. He's not quite human, kind of human, and he's kind of into science and logic, right? So we could say he's an alien, and that he is a scientist. We would give him some kind of name like Spork instead of Spock. I don't know, something that feels Vulcan or is goofy, either way. We would want a goal that's sort of suited to someone like that. Probably not meet sexy aliens or shoot bad guys. He's more of a find new worlds kind of person, right? So he's sort of this alien scientist out to discover new planets. That's his jam. Now when we pick his number, we want to pick a number between 2 and 5, and the higher it is, the better we are at what the game calls lasers. And the lower the number, the better it is for what the game calls feelings. So a high number like 5 represents we're good at technology, science, cold rationality, calm, precise action, whereas a low number means that we're good at things like intuition, diplomacy, seduction, and wild, passionate action. So for someone like Spock, we would want to pick a 5, right? Because he should be maxed out on the logic and cold, rational stuff. Even though he does have moments where he's touchy-feely, those are rare and weird for him, right? So that would be our Spock character. Alien, scientist, level 5, number 5, who wants to discover new worlds. Now, what if we wanted to make a Kirk character, someone who's kind of like the captain's out, so he can't be the captain, but he could be kind of a dashing, brave, sort of impulsive kind of a character. We might want to call him a hotshot or dangerous, maybe intrepid, although I would honestly have to look that up to see exactly what it means. Because he can't be the captain, maybe he's a explorer or a pilot. We could sort of choose, right? Let's call him a hotshot pilot. And then we're going to give him a strong feelings number because on the TV show, Kirk was always sort of like, action from the feelings, action from the impulses, right? So he would probably be a hotshot pilot 2. And his goal, Kirk did meet all the sexy aliens. But let's say that he just wants to keep being awesome, keep doing the awesome thing, or actually become captain. That might be a good one for someone like a Kirk, early Kirk kind of thing. He's got this ambition for power and control, right? So in other words, that's how you could sort of create a character that fits into the scenario, right? Once everybody's got a character, you're going to create the ship together collaboratively. And the ship is just made out of a couple things, 2 strengths and a problem. So the strengths listed here, fast, nimble, well-armed, powerful shields, etc., are just sort of advantages that you'll have to narrate how your ship helps you in the problems that come up. And the problem is something that the GM is going to use to help drive the fiction forward and create kind of tension and put you in interesting situations. So it could be fuel hog, or there's only one medical pod, and the captain's already in it, so that means if somebody else gets hurt, there's a problem. Do you bring the captain out and risk whatever that weirdness is? You got to make up your mind. Portable circuit breakers, which means so there's weird electrical malfunctions that could be interesting and funny. And a grim reputation means that in the past, the ship has done bad things and has enemies in the universe that are out to get it, right? Let's come back to rolling the dice. While players are creating their characters and collaborating on coming up with the ship, the GM should be over here figuring out what's going to be going on in the story. So there's a pretty neat system here where you just roll a 6-sided die 4 times, and it gives you the bare bones of a scenario that you're going to run. So it could be, so for example, there's a threat, what the threat wants to do, to what, and what the results of it will be if they accomplish what they're trying to do. So it could be, space pirates are trying to, let's say, steal. I don't seem to be able to highlight that. Steal the void crystals from somebody. And if they do, they'll be able to reverse time. We don't want the space pirates reversing time, because if they do that, they'll steal all of the things in history, right? So there's high stakes and a weird premise. And you can roll on this until you get something that you like, or you can just sort of pick things that sound interesting to you as you go. And it gives you just like a couple paragraphs here of advice about how to actually run the game once it's going. Okay, so here's how the game master runs the game. It says, play to find out how they defeat the threat. Introduce the threat by showing evidence of its recent badness. Before a threat does something to the character, show signs that it's about to happen. Then ask them what they do. And some examples here. Zorgon charges the mega cannons on his ship. What do you do? Danella pours you a glass of Arcturian whiskey and slips her arm around your waist. What do you do? And it says, call for a roll when a situation is uncertain. Don't pre-plan outcomes. Let the chips fall where they may. Use failures to push the action forward. The situation always changes after a roll for good or ill. Ask questions and build on the answers. Have you encountered a void cultist before? Where? What happened? So this is a lot of rich GM advice and like how to run games like packed into very small language. I almost wish we didn't have a spaceship and did have more tips. But let me see if I can spell out some of these tips, at least to the best of my knowledge. Play to find out how they defeat the threat means you don't know in advance how that's going to happen. You don't have a pre-baked idea of what they need to accomplish first before they're able to get there and win, right? If it's space pirates trying to steal void crystals, we don't know how they're going to interrupt that plan or even if they'll decide to. So we're just going to be, as GM, we're going to be curious. We're going to present them with situations and see what they do, and eventually what they do will result in something that feels like a solution, and we'll go with that. It says, introduce the threat by showing evidence of its recent badness. So if it's space pirates stealing void crystals, what's the recent badness there? Well, maybe we receive a transmission from a planet in our sector, and they're saying, help, we're being attacked by space pirates. Or we encounter a vessel adrift, and we board to see what happened, and they've all been killed by space pirates who took some kind of data, looks like a map to this planet where there's void crystals, right? Recent badness means this threat, whatever the threat is actively in the world of the fiction going about trying to accomplish its goals. And as it does that, it leaves a trail of signs behind. When the space pirates rob or steal or burn things down or attack people or steal stuff or try to use the stuff they've stolen, it leaves a trail of stories in its wake, right? People who have been affected by this or landscape that's been changed by this. And so we're going to present that to the players so they can explore it and interact with it and then hopefully reach some kind of conclusion where they figure out, we should pursue this further. We should pursue the clues here further, right? Or, here comes a threat. We better do something about it. Before a threat does something to the characters, show signs that it's about to happen, then ask them what they do. So in other words, when you're running the game and they land on a planet where the space pirates are attacking, don't say something like, the space pirates destroy you, you're all dead, right? That doesn't feel fair or balanced. You want to instead just sort of present the beginnings of the threat and see how they respond. So, it says they charge the cannons on their ship, or this lady's trying to seduce you, or they're pointing a gun at you, or he has the void crystal and threatens to throw it into the mouth of this weird beast that will send them back in time, or, right? Present the thing that they're about to do that's bad, and then give the players a chance to do something about it. And keep doing that. Keep presenting them with things that are about to be really bad and see what they do about it. And when they do something about that, give them something else that's about to be really bad. Call for a roll when the situation is uncertain. Generally, when they're responding to some kind of threat, that's going to be uncertain, and you're going to present them with a lot of, signs that something bad's about to happen. It says don't pre-plan the outcomes, kind of let the dice decide things, which is great. We'll see how that works in just a second. Use failures to push the action forward. Now this is kind of a key principle in a lot of games, a lot of newer games, which is if they fail a roll, they're going to say something like, all right, I'm going to dodge the laser, and they fail their roll. You can have them get shot and hurt and then fall down, and if that moves the story forward. But if it doesn't, if it just feels like a dead end, then change the response, right? The classic example of this is if they're trying to get through a door and it's hard to get through the door. Maybe it's locked and they have to pick the lock. And they roll to try to pick the lock and they fail, then the fiction just stops at that point, right? It's like there's story on the other side of the door that they're trying to get through, and they just have to keep rolling and rolling and rolling until finally they can get there. That bogs the game down in ways that are pretty dull. So if you find yourself in a situation like that, where a failure would feel like the story stopped and people wouldn't know quite what to do, then instead you can give them a kind of partial success with consequences, or a failure that opens kind of some other door somewhere else. Not a door, but opens a new part of the story and takes them in a different direction. They get some other sign of danger that they have to respond to. So the story should always be moving forward, right? This last piece is really big. Ask questions and build on the answers. Have you encountered void cultists before? Where? What happened? This is a big deal. In a lot of older role-playing game designs, the deal was because the GM ran the world, the GM knew everything about the world, and players were there to just sort of unravel it or discover it as they went. The GM knew everything, had to know everything, and place it in front of the players. In sort of some contemporary games, the burden has shifted, or the division of responsibility has shifted, where the GM can invite players to help them build the world together, and can say things like, can ask the characters about their history. What do you remember about this? Where you grew up, did they have this sort of thing? What did they do? How do you know each other from the past? Or you encounter this person, how does so-and-so know them? That sort of thing. Setting up, asking the characters about what they remember, what their sort of history is, what their culture's like, if they're alien or whatever. Space culture is probably different than our culture no matter what, right? So asking them about how they grew up, what their thoughts and feelings are, what they know, what they don't know, is a way of kind of indirectly building the world, and then you can build on that. That way players feel like they're inventing their character, and you're inventing a world that responds to the character they've invented. It's not easy to do, and probably I should put together something about what makes good questions and how do you do this, but if you're sort of stumped at any point, you don't kind of know what the next thing is to do, you might be able to come up with a question that's like, what do you remember about this place? Or something like that. There's ways to ask questions that kind of go too far, I think. You don't want your players to be inventing everything, probably, or especially things that their characters wouldn't know. So you want to kind of limit the questions you ask to things like, for example, if it's Spock, I might ask things about what a scientist might know or be able to guess, right? Like, how do you know that there's life on this planet, right? What are the signs that you see? If someone's an explorer, I might ask them, if we're on an away mission, I might ask them something like, what signs, you see signs of recent activity here, what life, what are they, right? Maybe they know how to read these things. Something where their expertise or their style might give them insight, right? Okay, so that's kind of a lot of advice packed into a very small space, each of which I could probably do a whole video on, but we'll leave it there for now. So you're going to invent a world, and you're going to kind of moderate that world and present it to them in the fiction. And at some point, the player is going to try to do something where the outcome is uncertain. They're going to try to jump across a large gap, or fight with something that's dangerous, or try to figure something out that maybe they don't know how to figure out, right? When that happens, they're going to roll one six-sided die, 1d6, to find out how it goes. Roll plus 1d, an extra six-sided die, if they're prepared, and even another one if they're an expert. The GM tells you how many dice to roll based on your character and situation. Roll your dice and compare die result to your number. So this is also a lot in a small space, and there's some questions here. What does it mean to be prepared? What does it mean to be an expert? The game doesn't really answer in its text, so it's up to us to interpret, and I assume that different tables do this differently. I'm going to guess that prepared means that before they did this thing, the player said something about how they were preparing to do it. Before they tried to shoot the giant lizard monster on the planet, they took time to set up their weapon and set up the circumstances and take aim. Maybe that's prepared, right? What does it mean to be an expert? Probably it means it fits into their role, right? If they're a soldier and they're doing some shooting, they're an expert in that. If they're an envoy and they're doing some negotiation or ambassadory kind of things, then they should be good at that. If they're a doctor and they're healing people, then they're the expert, right? My guess is that expertise is tied into that. So you're going to roll one six-sided die no matter what. If you take some time to set it up first, you're going to do another die. And if you have a roll that's relevant, then you get a third die. You'll roll all of the dice that you've got and see what happens. If you're using lasers, it says you want to roll under your number. So if we're Spock and we're doing something rational, then we're trying to get less than 5, right, on all of our rolls. If you're using feelings and you want to roll over your number. So if we're Spock and we're doing something emotional, we want to roll over 5. He's not going to be good at that. But if we're Kirk and we're trying to do something rational, we want to roll under 2. Bad idea. But if we're Kirk and we're doing something that's emotional, rapport or passion, then we want to roll over our number, which is 2, right? So, and I'll tell you what the results mean in a second, but this rule is here so that players sort of play to their character. So encourage them to play to their character, right? If they're a more rational character, they'll do things that are more rational. If they're a more passionate character, they'll be rewarded for doing things that are more passionate, right? They'll get more successes that way. Now the 0, 1, 2, 3 exclamation point is how many successes do you have? Meaning how many times did you roll, in the case of lasers, under your number, or in the case of feelings, over your number. So if let's just give an example here that'll help. We're Spock, and we're going to analyze the area with some kind of device that we've got that can scan the area. We're going to try to see if we can learn where the weird energy is coming from. Okay. We roll some dice. We prepared for this because we took some time to set it up, and we're an expert, so we're going to roll 3 dice. And each one of them that is less than 5, because we're doing something rational and science-y, each one of those that is less than 5 will give us a success. If none of them succeed, if they're all 5 or greater, it goes wrong. The GM says how things get worse somehow. If 1 die succeeds, we barely manage it. The GM inflicts a complication, harm, or cost. If 2 succeed, we did it well, very good job. If 3 succeed, we get a critical success, we get some extra effect. So if Spock's looking at his tricorder or whatever it is, rolls 3 dice, and they're all 6s, you don't learn anything. But we're not going to stop it there. This is an example of the locked door problem, right? If we just don't learn anything, then the fiction doesn't move forward. So he has to instead probably learn something bad, like the weird energy is coming from right under your feet and you're in trouble. Or while you're busy doing this, you don't realize that you're being approached by the lizard men behind you, or whatever it is, right? Your failure has to kind of push things in an interesting direction, otherwise it falls flat. If we get 1 success, we barely manage it, and there's a complication or a cost. So yes, you kind of figure out where it is, but in the meantime, there's a dust storm picking up or something, right? 2 successes, yep, you found it, it's over there. And you can go there now if you want. 3 successes, not only did you find the location of the weird energy, but you have a pretty good idea of what it is, right? It appears to be, has all the signatures of a certain kind of life form that you're familiar with, right? Something like that. So extra information. Now, here's how I interpret this. If any of your numbers is exactly your number, if any of your dice shows exactly your number, so in Spock's case 5, right? If we roll our dice for the tricorder scan and we get any 5s, I think, then we have laser feelings. You get special insight into what's going on. Ask the GM a question and they'll answer you honestly. Here's some good questions. What are they really feeling? Who's behind this? How can I get them to do blank? What should I be on the lookout for? What's the best way to blank? What's really going on here? You can change your action if you want to, then roll again. So if Spock's doing his scan and let's say gets like 3 and a 2 and a 5. 3 and a 2 are both under 5, so they're both successes. We did a good job. We're going to succeed at our tricorder scan. We also got a 5, which is a laser feeling. So I think the way to do this is to stop, do the laser feelings, and then decide if we want to re-roll. We get an extra insight. In this case, the Spock player could ask the GM anything. They might ask something like, what's the best way to get there? Or what should I be on the lookout for on the way over? Right? Or who's behind this weird signature? So they get extra insight and extra information from their scan. If for some reason that new information makes me think, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, maybe I should be doing this other thing. Maybe as he's scanning, he asks, what's really going on here? And the answer is, it's a trap. Then maybe Spock wants to change his action to get the heck out, right? Something like that. In which case, name a new action, re-roll the dice, figure things out again. helping, this is sort of the last rule here. If you want to help someone else, say how you try and make a roll. If you succeed, give them +1 die. So it's possible to roll up to 4 dice, although 4 successes doesn't get you any better than 3. So somebody can chip in and say, all right, well, while Spock's doing that, I want to help him by, I don't know, what do you do when someone's helping with a tricorder scan? You have to come up with something fictional that makes sense, and then test it with a die. If you get a success, they get to roll an extra die. Okay. One more little piece of advice for the GM before I turn this video off. When you're setting up the adventure and trying to get things rolling, the game is giving you a lot of stuff to draw on over here with the characters. That if you are paying attention during character creation and draw on the stuff that they've given you, you have a lot to build on to start doing the stuff that you need to do, like, you know, announce the recent badness of the threat. For example, you have the problem with the ship. Let's say you announce a recent badness. There's this spaceship floating adrift in space with a distress signal going on, no signs of life aboard, and this is what you're hoping they'll go there and figure out that pirates are up to no good in this sector. But they decide they're going to ignore that ship and go somewhere else because it's a pretty pink planet. They're interested in seeing what's going on there. Now what do you do? How do you kind of want to get them back aboard? You sort of have two choices. One is to sort of invent a new threat and announce some other new badness that's happening, that they can encounter that instead. The other is to kind of let them discover the badness a different way by presenting new signs and bringing them to it. You can also use things like the problem with the ship to get them there. Like, fuel hog means they're going to run out of gas and are going to need to stop somewhere to get more fuel. Like, hey, maybe there's fuel aboard that ship that's adrift. Or that pretty pink planet that you go to has a bunch of crystals that you can acquire if you spend a little time with your tractor beams. While you're doing that, this happens, right? What else could you do? There could be some sort of electronic glitch that then sort of gives them new information or something somehow. The grim reputation could mean that some other ship approaches them and accuses them of the piracy. There's pirates in this sector. We think it's you, right? And they'll have to defend themselves and do some kind of diplomacy stuff to get out of that. And then they'll be awake to the fact that there's pirates. You also have Captain Darcy, who has some psychic entity possessing them, known as the something else. Maybe Captain Darcy comes out of the medical pod and is talking in weird languages and then figures out how to translate from psychic entity to you and says, take me to the planet with the void crystals. We must defend them from the pirates. You've got a lot of stuff to draw on here. You also, as players are inventing their characters, you can be asking them questions about those characters, like what makes you so intrepid? How are you so savvy? When did you first become a doctor? What is your specialty, right? Why are you that number? Why are you so rational? What happens to you when you have to feel something? What was the last feeling you remember that made you not want to feel that way anymore? You can ask lots of questions to draw out history from characters, and that should give you material to work with as you're sort of building the fictional world that they have to encounter later. Okay, so build on what's there, invent the thing, present it to them, and just see where it goes. They're going to make decisions. You're going to say what happens. They'll roll some dice. You keep moving the fiction forward. If they veer off track and lose track of saving the planet from the void crystals, you have some choices. Either invent a new thing for them to discover, bring them back on track, or just let the bad thing happen. Let the space pirates get the void crystals and reverse time. All of a sudden, announce to the players that it's 30 years ago and they're children, and they're seeing some kind of effect. They have to respond that way or something, right? Or that it's like 3 weeks ago. They reverse that far and they recognize everything. They're playing through the same stuff. What happened? All right, that's enough of that. That's enough advice. I could keep going on, but I won't. Have fun with this. Give it a try. And as you do, think about its design. Think about how the rules are working together and how, if you were going to hack this game to communicate a different theme, a lot of people have done this, but it's a good exercise. If you're going to take lasers and feelings and make it something else and something else, what would it be? How would you adapt this rule set to produce a game set in some other universe or in some other genre, or to make it about some other topic? Okay, that'd be the challenge here. All right, that's it for this time. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again.